Do you remember playing a game for the first time and just being blown away by its world? For me, this was Grand Theft Auto 4. The atmosphere was insane and the quality was on another level. But fast forward to today, and apart from a couple of standout games, so many open worlds look incredible, but on the inside, they're empty and boring as hell. But the big question is, why? And I think this boils down to three pretty big reasons. So in recent times, have you noticed how game developers are obsessed with making their open worlds as huge as possible? The maps have gotten ridiculously big over the years. But if you're anything like me, you know that bigger definitely doesn't mean better. Yeah, my Johnson is bloody tiny. Red Dead Redemption 2 was one of the few huge open world games to kind of do the impossible. Yes, the map was pretty big, but the level of detail was on another planet. You could interact with anyone with unique responses from every single NPC. They all had their own lives with complex daily routines and jobs, and they never really felt like filler. Even older games like GTA 4 had NPCs that truly interacted with the world, such as seeing bin men, postmen, and more, making the world just feel real. And am I the only one who misses the idea of pointless side activities? And I feel like this is getting forgotten these days. Maybe I'm just a sad prick, but I actually liked throwing darts, pumping iron, playing pool, fishing, hunting, or busting some bints back doors in, like we saw in games years ago. Even massively underrated titles like Sleeping Dogs went out of their way to create unique side activities we'd never seen before. And with how far technology has come since then, I kind of expected this to grow with the times, like having to pay taxes, refuel cars, and getting royally rogered by the government on the regular. But somehow games seem to have gone backwards, and even the best developers like Rockstar Games didn't really build on this with games like GTA 5. And it is kind of a shame because even though these are kind of pointless, I do think they enhance open worlds. But to Rockstar's credit, Red Dead 2 really did the impossible, because even if you remove the side quests, random events, you still have hunting, fishing, realistic NPCs, and a world that is so much better than 99% of games today, despite its size and age. But why have maps gotten so much bigger and better looking, and yet feel even more lifeless than before? Well, I think one company in particular is a big reason for this. A lot of us loved the older Assassin's Creed games. They had characters we truly cared about, incredible atmospheres, and maps we actually wanted to explore. And yes, they were never that big, but they definitely had a charm to them that can be hard to explain to someone who's never played them before. But as time went on, Ubisoft's intentions really did shift. And if you look at the maps from their older games and compare them to what we have now, aside from graphics, it's crazy how little real improvement there actually is. And in some ways, it's even gone backwards. Assassin's Creed Unity from 2014 is actually a great example of this. Yes, the game wasn't perfect, but it's a smaller, super detailed version of revolutionary Paris, and it was packed with people, riots, encounters, and a real gritty atmosphere you could almost feel. And even now, I find it incredibly hard not to explore the map and get lost in it. But then you have games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Shadows that have huge maps, but none of the atmosphere and feel. And it's more about making you grind for gear and getting a broken to crud back from the countless praying, rather than trying to immerse you into the world, creating a tone you actually want to explore. And this just results in a lot of us getting bored shitless really quickly. But nothing really comes close to what Starfield did. It tried to do something huge by letting us explore whole solar systems that sounds impossible and rather rod-on producing for a lot of us on the surface, but then you realise it's just a bunch of lifeless computer-generated planets, constant loading screens, and almost nowhere that's actually worth exploring, making it one of the most disappointing open world games we've had in years. But huge bloated maps really isn't the main issue, as there is a deeper, way more fundamental problem we have to discuss. And just before we expose that, please do not get ripped off paying silly money for your games. I use Instant Gaming to grab my game keys, and it's way cheaper than Steam and the PlayStation and Xbox store. You literally get your games instantly, no messing about, and it works straight away. I've been using them for years, and it's fast, easy, and it saves you getting royally done over. Just click the link down below in the description, and you will save some cash, and it also helps out the channel too. So now this brings us to the second major issue that many games completely miss, which is all about one simple question. Why? You can't just slap a bunch of icons on a map and say go here and go here. As the player, we need to know why we're going there, what's the character's motivation, and why we are collecting 400 random pieces of paper. Unless it's Playboy bloody magazines from Mafia. If you're anything like me, I'm sure there's been times when a game just doesn't hook you, and you either turn the bastard off, or painfully rush your way through it, not giving a royal toss about its open world it's trying to establish. And more than ever, players get bored of games very quickly, and thank this heap of cack. And games really do have to hook you faster than ever, and instantly make you care for the world it's trying to build. But this issue even spreads to something else many games are guilty of, and feels copied straight from Ubisoft's playbook. In a game like Red Dead 2, many side quests involve characters from your camp, and they often stretch across several missions. You care because they spend time to establish really relatable people or characters from the main story. And not only that, you slowly learn their backstories, which makes you give a toss and even strengthens the plot. And because it gives you just the right amount of time with these characters, it leads to emotional moments and the want to actually do them. Hell, even Spider-Man 2 achieved this, but with half the effort. All they did was put a bit of care and effort into the writing, took a moment to slow down from the action, and introduced a character a lot of us can relate to in our personal lives. And it was only like 1 or 2 missions long, and yet it still had a long-lasting impact a lot of us might remember, more than some of the action set pieces. And by contrast, most modern side quests today really are piss poor. Even a great game like Cyberpunk 2077, which did make an incredible comeback, kind of falls into this trap despite having some really interesting side quests for the most part. The map is literally caked in repetitive icons, like hundreds of police scanner hustles that are all the damn same. Go somewhere, kill a bunch of twats, and loot a box. And it just feels wasted and there to stretch out the playtime, instead of pointing their efforts to fix things like the terrible AI, or the fact that various NPCs look like they've been beating their schlong for the last 8 hours. And the reason this annoys me so much is this one mistake almost ruined an entire franchise I used to love to death, and you probably too. The first 2 Mafia games treated the explorable map as a kind of dressing. The story was always the main focus, and it was designed to carry you from start to finish. And although this might not be everyone's taste, for a lot of us, this was never a problem as the story was so damn good in both games. As the old big honk legend himself would say, it was literally like witnessing absolute cinema, but in the form of a video game. And I think many of us can agree that not every square inch of the map has to be filled with side activities and fluff. And not every title has to be a complete open world. But with Mafia 3, it seemed like the developers saw how much money GTA 5 made and decided to throw everything that worked out the window. They made the story an afterthought and turned the game into a repetitive open world grind that can only really be enjoyed if you have stage 6 dementia. They had no idea what they were doing, and despite the solid gameplay, the insane number of repetitive missions sprinkled between an average story led to endless disappointment and bad reviews. And ultimately for me, the story has to hook you. Otherwise, the open world is just never going to feel fully worth exploring or worth investing your time in, especially when there is so much competition. But even with a great story, the experience can be ruined by something else entirely, and is probably the most disappointing thing with games today. Do you remember getting your games, opening up the case, and getting a pretty big booklet, a map, and just a feeling that they actually cared and put the effort in? I was opening my PS2 copies of GTA Vice City and San Andreas recently, and I couldn't really believe what used to come in the box. You'd get a whole booklet detailing places of interest, lore about the map, shops to visit, and even some really cool album art. The detail is kind of crazy and makes the setting you're about to explore almost tangible. Even just getting a map was something I always loved, as the first thing I do is memorize the location of the nearest strip. Now, even great games like GTA 5 and Red Dead 2 have reduced what you get in the box, and you have to shell out for a special edition if you want anything else, like the blueprint map for GTA 5 for example. But when you compare the most loved recent games with what you got in a PS2 game about 20 years ago, that's when you realise how low the bar really has dropped. But it's not just about nostalgia for paper maps and extras. The decline in effort goes much deeper than some players out there even realise. Red Dead 2 did something amazing that doesn't really get talked about much. Have you noticed how it rarely makes you interact with a menu screen? Even when you buy things from shops, the clerk passes you a book and you browse items completely in-game, supported with dialogue too. Deeper insights into the story, Arthur's thoughts, and more is expressed through a journal, instead of flicking through menus, reading or listening to notes like in 99% of other games. And the immersion this creates goes massively under the radar. Yet, this somehow seems to have gone backwards ever since. Games like Watch Dogs once allowed you to enter lots of interiors to create the feeling of an alive world, but would later remove this function entirely, massively reducing the amount of enterable buildings, and instead, you'd be greeted with lazy-ass menus reminding you that you're playing a video game. And games like Cyberpunk does its best to make you feel like you're in Night City. It lets you sit at a bar and have a drink to soak in the atmosphere, but then a second later you're flicking through a standard RPG menu to manage your loot. And Starfield, well, let's not even go there. You're looking at menus more than playing the damn game for Pete's sakes. But that lack of effort even affects how maps are designed and interacted with too. Like mentioned earlier, the best open world games do their very best to keep you in the world. But have you noticed in games like Red Dead 2, GTA or Witcher 3, when travelling around the map or entering interiors, you literally see 0 loading screens? And this makes way more of a difference than you might think, as I feel it reduces the possibility of you picking up your phone or being distracted with something else. Whereas games today seem to be more focused on letting you explore bloody solar systems, rather than reducing the time looking at baldy freaks or silly bints giving it the large one during loading screens. So I actually think laziness has impacted minimaps too over the years, as it's sad how many games have adopted the exact same template we've seen for years now. Open your map, set the waypoint, and just follow the damn line to get to your location. And yes, this makes things really straightforward, and we have become accustomed to it now, but it impacts the open world way more than some people think. You might be surprised by just how different of an experience you can get if you hide elements like the minimap. By turning it off in games like Red Dead 2, I actually started learning the roads and the landmarks, as well as just appreciating the landscapes instead of just staring at some whirligig. And it's so satisfying going from Saint Denis to Strawberry without making a wrong turn because you actually know the land. And I think games like Ghost of Yachty and Asuma did a great job of tackling this, as the developers created a game without needing a minimap, and instead, the wind shows you the way you need to go, letting your eyes focus on the world they've built, instead of being glued to the bottom right corner. But it's not just about how you get from point A to B. Thinking back to GTA 4, Rockstar literally built a working subway system with multiple lines and its own transit map, even though they knew most players would just be stealing cars and driving around. And that's the kind of crazy and seemingly pointless detail that makes a world feel special. And the fact you can interact with literally every single person in Red Dead 2 and get a unique reaction is something you don't see anymore. Seeing how shopkeepers treat you after robbing them a few days ago is hilarious, and details like the bollocks on your horse shrinking in the cold and how it shits out the odd gorilla finger every now and then are details that add so much more value than other developers seem to realise, as it feels like you discover something new every time you play. But I also think this can be taken a bit too far. And look, I loved how when first exploring the map in Ghost of Yachty, you'd encounter countless random events, as it did remind me of Red Dead 2 in some respects, and it does feel the opposite to Lifeless. But when you consider its setting and the time period it's set, yes, experiencing lots of random encounters is amazing, don't get me wrong, but I feel it's important not to overdo it, as I would begin ignoring loads of random encounters to pursue the story, or do the opposite and ignore the story and get completely sidetracked with encounters. And if it was set in a sprawling modern day city setting, then yes, I think it would fit far better, but it's not. And I feel there is a balance you have to get right. So, it's fine just talking about why open world games have downgraded so much over the years, but it's basically a waste of time if we aren't going to talk about how to fix them. First, although I know it may piss some people off, but I think maps need to get smaller again. It's impossible to create a giant map like in the new Assassin's Creed games without cutting corners somewhere. Keep them smaller, more condensed and heavily detailed. And we don't need or want any generated bollocks. Second, give us a story that's actually interesting. Make us care about our character, which gives us reason and purpose to do things. Let side quests become an extension of its compelling story, fleshing out characters more and allowing us to invest more into the plot. Bring back physical extras, put maps and booklets in the game case again, and let us feel like we actually own the games we buy. And last but not least, the focus should always be quality over quantity, full stop, no matter what. But let me know your thoughts and what you think open world games should focus on going forward. I would love to know. And to see my deep dive of what Assassin's Creed game truly had the best open world parkour, and whether the old games really were as good as we remember, click the video on screen, you don't want to miss this. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.